You know, the truth of the matter is we live in a society that is full of doubt. We live in a society that has no fear for God. We live in a society that tries to tell you that God doesn't exist. But here's the thing. At some point, we are all going to know and understand that God exists. Verse number 24, the Bible says, "But Thomas, one of the 12, called Didymus, was not with them when Jesus came. The other disciples, therefore, said unto him, We have seen the Lord. But he said unto them, Except I shall see in his hands the print of the nails, and put my finger into the print of the nails, and thrust my hand into his side, I will not believe. And after 8 days, again, his disciples were within, and Thomas was with them. Then came Jesus, the doors being shut, and stood in the midst, and said, Peace be unto you. Then saith he to Thomas, Reach hither thy finger, and behold my hands, and reach hither thy hand, and thrust it into my side, and be not faithless, but believing. And Thomas answered and said unto him, My Lord, my God. And Jesus saith unto him, Thomas, because thou hast seen me, thou hast believed. Blessed are they that have not seen, and yet have believed. Let's talk a little bit about Didymus here, right? Because most of us probably never knew that Thomas was called Didymus, right? And Didymus in translation basically means the twin, all right? Because every time we talk about Thomas, we always call him Doubting Thomas, right? That's the nickname that the man has had now for over 2,000 years, right? Or right at 2,000 years. Doubting Thomas, that's what we all call him. That's what every Sunday school lesson for children call him. That's what every sermon calls him. And so for over roughly 2,000 years, or right at 2,000 years, Thomas has had this nickname of Doubting Thomas. And this morning we're going to talk about ways that this false god of doubt creeps into our lives. And first of all, the world, it starts with the world, because the world is going to try to make you doubt God's existence. All right? It's just the truth. I heard a story this week, and it's amazing how, when you're working on a sermon or whatever, that God just puts things in your path and that kind of thing. And I was flipping through the Facebook reels there, listening to different pastors and such. And I don't even know who this guy was, but he was telling this story. He said there was this pastor that went into this barber shop. And he sits down to get his hair cut. And said that they're talking, and the barber says, Pastor, he goes, I don't know why you're a pastor. He said, you know God doesn't exist, right? He looked at him and he goes, well, how do you figure that? He goes, well, if God existed, why would good things or bad things happen to good people? And he just kind of looked at him and he said, it's almost like you're wasting your life because God doesn't exist. Pastor said, okay. So he finished up his haircut, just didn't really say much, just left it alone. The pastor goes out of the barber shop, turns left, goes down, he sees this homeless man. Shaggy hair, matted up beard. He said, hey, you come with me for a minute? He said, well, I assume. He said, I just need your help for 5 minutes. He said, that's all I need. Okay. Pastor takes that homeless man into the barber shop. He walks in and he says, Barbers don't exist. The man looked at him, he goes, what do you mean barbers don't exist? He goes, well, if barbers existed, this man's beard wouldn't be so matted and his hair wouldn't be so long and he wouldn't be as ungroomed as he is. And the barber said, but he never came to me. And the pastor said, that's right. He said, we make our own choices in life that sometimes lead to bad things happening to good people. He said, but the reason a lot of times that people don't know that God exists is because they're simply not coming to him. And man, I heard that this week and I was like, wow, I don't know where you heard that, but that is awesome, and I'm going to steal it. Because, sometimes that's what we do, right? I guess I shouldn't say steal. We were borrowing it, right? Yeah, reusing. That's one of the 3 R's: reuse, recycle, and something else. Thank you. I obviously don't follow the 3 R's, right? Some of the guys know what this is, all right? Some of y'all don't. This is a 4x4, okay? Or at least it was. So we had a little project on Tuesday. We went and helped a lady in the community to clean up some trees and rebuild a fence. I did very well at the cutting up and the taking down part. Ken and Brian and Justice did really well at the rebuilding part, and I just kind of stood there and watched them because the building part's not my thing. But me being me, always late, not always having time, that sort of thing, I was going to go measure said fence, right? And I said, hey, if I go over there and measure this thing, I can get the wood and have everything ready. Well, the day that I was going to go, it rained. And then I went on vacation, and then I came back, and I'm sitting in the recliner, and I'm like, man, I need to go measure that fence before we go over there. And the recliner got pretty comfortable, and I started looking at the picture that the lady had sent me, and I'm like, you know what? I think I can just eyeball this. And roll the dice and see what happens. Now, I didn't get the exact width of the planks there is one part of her fence that will be here after Jesus comes back, but it's reinforced. But surprisingly enough, I got the perfect amount of planks. But I really misread the braces that those planks would go onto. I bought 4x4s. Those were 2x4s. And so we're sitting there looking at it and we're like, what are we going to do? And here's Brian with a chainsaw. You got 4 guys with chainsaws. We're like, I mean, you do math, a 4x4 cut in half becomes a 2x4, right? Makes sense. And then somebody made the mistake. I don't know which one it was, but somebody made the mistake that said, you can't take a chainsaw and turn a 4x4 into a 2x4. So at that point, Brian's wheels start spinning, and he is determined to take a 4x4 and turn it into 2x4s, right? Why? Because we doubted that he could. And guess what? It's probably a little thicker than a 2x4, but it worked. And again, like I said, there's probably about a 6 to 8 foot span of her fence that will still be here after Christ comes back because it's not moving. And again, we doubted that Brian could take a chainsaw and cut a 4x4 in half. So what did Brian do? Brian took a chainsaw and he cut a 4x4 in half. And we get to this point in our lives where we say God doesn't exist. But we never test it. We never try it. We never take the moment to say, I'm going to go seek it out and find out, right? We would have never known if Brian's corded, not wired, corded chainsaw could cut a 4x4 in half to a 2x4. We'd have never known had Brian not said, going to give it a shot. You will never understand who God is, what God is capable of if you don't seek him out and give it a shot. If you enjoyed that message, then you'll want to check out this video for more biblical truths. You can help spread the gospel by clicking the like button or even consider subscribing. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you at the next one.